Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel for a car review. Today we have a brand new 2025 Cadillac Escalade IQ. The Escalade IQ is brand new for 2025 and is the first electrified version of the Escalade. However, going electric is truly a big deal for the Escalade, which has been around for over 20 years. It is very famous and Cadillac's most important model, and it is also always known as being a big, brash, and bold luxury truck. It's a winning formula that Cadillac really shouldn't mess with, so we'll see how this vehicle stacks up. And also, I do want to apologize, this vehicle is going to be dirty for this entire review. As you can see, we've had a little bit of snow, so it's impossible to keep this thing clean when driving around, so please forgive me for that. And before we take a deep dive into this particular Escalade, I would like to thank LaRich Chevrolet Cadillac in Findlay, Ohio for letting me borrow this vehicle. They have been serving the Findlay and Northwest Ohio community for over 25 years. My own family has done business with LaRich, and I myself have serviced my XLRV there multiple times, and we have always been very happy with the service they provide. I will put a link in the description below to the LaRich website if you're interested in checking out their inventory. And if you're interested in buying an Escalade IQ for yourself, such as this very truck, it is currently for sale at LaRich, and you can also visit the website below to check it out. And I promise you, if you buy it, it will be cleaner than it is right now. I'd also like to take a moment to promote the Cadillac and LaSalle Club. If you have a love for Cadillacs or own your own very Cadillac, please consider joining this club. It is a great group of people and they like to keep interest in these cars alive. So if you'd like to join, please see the link in the description. And finally, I'd like to thank all the subscribers to the channel. We are nearing 25,000. What an amazing number. And I'd like to thank you all so much. However, only about 7% of people who watch my videos are subscribed. If you could please subscribe, it's a huge help, it's free, and you can always unsubscribe later. Next, let's talk a little bit about what exactly the electric Escalade IQ is. Well, it's a brand new model for 2025 and it comes available with 4 different trim levels: Luxury 1 and Sport 1 and Luxury 2 and Sport 2. However, there currently isn't a Platinum trim or a V-Series trim, and that could very well be because this is already a very expensive vehicle. The base price is about $128,000, which is about $40,000 more than the base 2025 ICE Escalade, and the Sport 2 trim of the Escalade IQ can go all the way up to $150,000, which is just $10,000 off from the range-topping ICE Escalade, the Escalade V. This particular Escalade IQ is a Luxury 1 model and is priced around $131,000. And also, what exactly does the name IQ mean? Well, this is the designation that Cadillac is using for all of their electric models, which includes the Optic, the Lyric, and the Vistic. And as far as the future is concerned for the Escalade IQ, there will be an IQL version coming out soon, which is even bigger than this vehicle. Now, taking a closer look at this Escalade IQ, we will start off with the front end, which I believe is truly massive and retains the Escalade bold styling. Even though this vehicle is electric and is a little bit smoother and less brash as the regular ICE or internal combustion Escalade, I still think this looks like an Escalade from the front end. And taking a look at the Cadillac badge, you may have noticed that it is unique compared to the regular Escalades, and that's because it's more of a monochromatic look and it actually lights up at nighttime, which is a really cool idea. However, the logo isn't the only thing on the front end of the car to light up. The grille also has lights in it as well, and this vehicle has a particularly beautiful startup animation at nighttime. It really looks stunning and is something that you can only really do on an electric vehicle because you have all this extra real estate up front, but that doesn't mean that there still isn't a grille up here. There are some slats here in the bumper for air to go through and probably to cool the batteries. And speaking of the lights on the front end of the vehicle, the headlights are also very beautiful as well and retain a more vertical style like most Cadillacs have these days. They are all LED and these lights have an auto leveling and cornering light feature. Next, at the side of the Escalade IQ, this is where we can truly appreciate the length of this vehicle. It is about 224 inches long, which is actually about a foot longer than the internal combustion Escalade and only 3 inches shorter than the ESV variant, which is truly amazing because this is the regular length IQ Escalade. The L hasn't even come out out yet, and it's already so massive. And as far as interesting things to point out, there are several. First of all, we have massive 24-inch wheels on this Escalade. On most other vehicles, these wheels would look oversized. However, because this truck is so big, the wheels actually fit the vehicle perfectly. There is also a beautiful Cadillac crest on both of the front doors, as well as a yellow turn signal, which looks very nice. There are also side steps on this vehicle to make getting in and out a little bit easier. However, they are a little small and they don't retract like the ICE Escalade, which is interesting. I also really like the doors on this Escalade. They have an electronic release and they feel very heavy and solid and luxurious, which I like. And higher end Escalades now come with power opening and closing doors, which is extremely luxurious and keeps you from having to do much work. I'd also like to point out the interesting D-pillar design on this vehicle. As you can see, it is body colored and essentially takes up a lot of the space where the third window would have been. It's an interesting look and almost makes this truck look a little bit like a hearse, but I think I like it because it makes the vehicle look a little bit more unique and different from the regular Escalade. Now let's move on to the back end of the Escalade IQ. And this is where we can see a very different design from the regular ICE Escalade, which is very boxy. Here we have a raked windshield, which has a swept back look, and the taillights are also split, which is different from the single taillight on the regular Escalade. I kind of wish that they would have had a similar design here, but these taillights are still massive, and I especially like how the lower taillight looks like piano keys, which is really beautiful. Also back here is a rear wiper integrated into the spoiler. There is an Escalade IQ badge, as well as another badge which says 1000 E4. This is signifying the Newton meters of torque that this Escalade produces. The E signifies that this vehicle is electric, and the 4 is four-wheel drive. And this Escalade IQ does have the ability to tow. However, this would drastically reduce the amount of range that the vehicle has, but I do believe it can tow about 8,000 pounds or so. And right beside me is a charge port to plug in the Escalade IQ, but interestingly, it actually is power opening and closing. That's very luxurious, but you better hope that never breaks. And there is also a very nice looking Cadillac badge on the rear end as well. Pressing this badge opens up the rear tailgate of the vehicle, but you can also open it in a very unique and interesting way. If you walk up to the vehicle within about 3 feet or so with the keys in your pocket, the car will beep several times and then the lift gate will open for you. But this is a very good idea, so then you don't have to try and kick your way into the vehicle if your hands are full. You just have to stand there and the car will open for you automatically. Next, let's see what the rear storage is like in the Escalade IQ. Now eventually, we'll see if we can get it open. I had a little bit of trouble with the auto sense feature, but I must not be doing something right. Anyways, once this is open, we have about 23 cubic feet of space behind the third row of seats. There is also an underfloor storage area, which isn't very large. And keep in mind that since this is an electric vehicle, all those batteries are underneath the floor, so it's a little bit higher back here, so you will have to lift suitcases and heavier items pretty high up to get it in here. But the nice thing is you can get additional storage space if needed by lowering the third and second rows. There are buttons on the left side of the storage compartment to do so. With the third row lowered, there's about 69 cubic feet of space, but with the second row lowered as well, it jumps to about 119 cubic feet of space. Next, let's take a look underneath the hood of the Escalade IQ. Not expecting to find a 500 cubic inch V8 engine, but who knows? Now there's actually a button in the grille that opens up this hatch. Once you press it, it'll open up automatically. And inside of here, we find a 12.2 cubic foot storage space. It is lockable and weatherproof. There is a nice rubber floor mat back here, as well as hooks and a home style outlet to plug things into. Other Cadillac electric models don't have a storage space such as the Lyriq, so I'm glad they found room to put it here in the Escalade. And since we just took a look under the hood of the Escalade IQ, now is the time that I should talk a little bit about what is powering this vehicle. It is a dual electric motor system that creates 750 horsepower and 785 pound-feet of torque. Now, those are some impressive numbers, but it pretty much has to be powerful to be able to move all this weight since it is such a big vehicle. This Escalade also has a 200 kilowatt hour battery capacity and is capable of charging at rates up to 800 volts DC fast charging. And in prime conditions, that means it can gain 100 miles of charge in just 10 minutes. However, when I spoke to the people at the Cadillac dealership, they said that most of the time the battery should only be charged to 80% because this is most time efficient and better for the health of the battery. However, you can still charge to 100% when going on long road trips, and when doing so in prime conditions, you should be able to get a range of about 460 miles, which is actually a better maximum range than the regular gas Escalade, which is actually pretty impressive and probably a number that Cadillac wanted to beat. Now, although we can't listen to an engine, we can at least hear what the Escalade sounds like when it's moving. Next, let's take a look at the key fob that came with this Escalade IQ. Now, taking a look at it, there really isn't anything unique about it. It looks like pretty much every other Cadillac key fob out there, whether the vehicle's electric or not. But I do like how this feels. It has a pretty good weight to it. But there are a few buttons on here. We have a lock button, unlock button, auto start button, and 2 buttons to open up both the front and back hatches, and a panic button. There is a lot of plastic on this key fob, but it will wear better than rubberized key fobs from the past. Now that we've taken a look at the outside of the Escalade IQ, let's go ahead and check out the interior. All right, so taking a look at this interior, it certainly is something special. Although this is a base Escalade, you are certainly not getting a base interior. The materials are all really nice. There is beautiful wood throughout, really nice metal in the dashboard and in the doors, as well as the door handle. And I love this leather-like material. It's called Interlux, which isn't real leather, but it still feels fantastic. And we have really beautiful blue stitching throughout the seats and on the doors. It really is a nice contrast, and everything here is put together very well. Although I will say from my experience with other Escalades, this interior is not as nice as, say, an Ice Platinum Escalade interior, especially for 2025. You can get this for a very similar price, and it's not quite as good and doesn't have quite as many features as that Escalade, but it still is a very luxurious place to be. And I especially like that the sill plate says Escalade IQ, so you know what vehicle you're getting into, and I like the logo on the side of the dashboard. It looks kind of like the Cadillac crest, and it has merlettes in it, which is a nice throwback to old Cadillac logos. So let's go ahead and sit in the Escalade and see what it's like. I am inside the Escalade IQ, and these seats are quite good. These still have a good bit of cushion to them, which I do appreciate, but certainly not like Cadillacs of several decades ago, unfortunately. But a couple things that I like about these seats is that there are speakers in the headrest. As you can see, there are holes on the left and right side. And secondly, I also like how the controls to the seat are on the door panel and not on the side of the seat. This makes them easier to reach, easier to see what you're doing, and it also allows for the seat to be a little bit wider because you don't need to stick your hand there. And these front 2 seats do have a fair amount of controls. They have a 4-way lumbar, memory seats, and a heated and ventilated function. And a nice feature that this Escalade has is automatic up and down windows for the front and the back. All the window controls are here on the door, as well as the mirror controls. And in front of the driver is a new 2-spoke steering wheel. Most new Cadillacs are now getting this wheel, which is quite nice. There are a lot of buttons on the steering wheel though. On the left side, most of that is dedicated for the cruise control, heated steering wheel, and Super Cruise. And that is a very nice system, allows for hands-free driving on the highway. We've actually tested it out on multiple vehicles and it really works well. And there's also a red V button on the left side, and this is for velocity mode, which allows for the motors to have the most power so you can get that fast acceleration out of the electric Escalade IQ. And there are buttons on the right side of the steering wheel, mostly dedicated for the multimedia system. And on the right side of the steering column is the electronic shifter. To put it in reverse, pull it back and up. Neutral is straight back, and then drive is back and down. And to put it in park, just press the button on the end. And on the left side of the steering column is another stalk to control the windshield wiper and the headlights. And fortunately, this is very easy to use. There are some levers on the back side of the stalk to adjust the wipers, and you just move the stalk when you want to adjust the headlights. And there is an interesting looking button on the back side of the steering wheel. It looks like it has a battery on it, and this is actually used to slow down the vehicle and recharge the batteries. Say if you're coming up to a stop sign and you don't want to use your brakes, you can just push this button in and the car will then start slowing down and recharge the battery a little bit. And the more you depress the button, the faster it'll slow down. And there are also buttons on the left side of the dashboard. This includes the electronic parking brake. You can open the front trunk and the rear hatch. And there's another button which allows you to raise and lower the air suspension in this vehicle. This Escalade has 4 inches of travel. You can raise it up 2 inches for maybe off-roading, or lower it 2 to make it easier to get in and out. And there's an entry-exit mode, which means that when this Escalade stops, it'll automatically lower to make it easier to get in or out. And then once you start going again, it'll raise back to its regular position, which is actually a really cool idea. But of course, the piece de resistance with this electric Escalade IQ is the 55-inch pillar-to-pillar display in this vehicle. And when I say pillar-to-pillar display, it technically is not pillar-to-pillar because there are actually 2 screens here. One of the screens is 35 inches wide, and that is split into 2 sections. One is the gauge cluster, then the center infotainment, and then there is a 20-inch section on the right, which is the passenger display screen. The 35-inch screen has 8K quality. It looks absolutely stunning, and the passenger screen has a 4K quality, which is still, of course, very good for watching movies or YouTube videos. And because this screen is so big, there's a lot of customization you can do to it. For example, in front of the driver, you can actually use a button on the steering wheel to adjust what you see. First, you can see a driver assistance screen, which shows your gap distance for the adaptive cruise. You can see Google Maps directly in front of you, which is a good safety feature. And then you can also see just the regular speedometer, which shows your speed, as well as your battery usage while you're moving. And luckily, Cadillac didn't overload this with too much information all at once, but you only see what you need to see, which I really do appreciate. And the center infotainment screen is a touchscreen. It works very well, very quick to respond. I haven't had any glitches or any problems with it so far. And there are a decent amount of apps here, but not too many to make it overbearing, but you can download more from the Google Play Store. But 2 apps that you will not find here are Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. And General Motors has been getting rid of those apps in most of their electric vehicles. And the reasoning behind that is that they say it doesn't integrate quite as well with charging stations along routes. So instead of those apps, General Motors has a built-in Google Maps system, which actually tells you how much battery percentage you will have when you get to certain destinations. It'll tell you where to stop along your routes to get a charge. So it's really a little bit easier to use for an electric car because it'll help you on those longer road trips where you may need to charge or have to worry a little bit more about your battery life. And there are a few useful and interesting apps within this system. First is one called Vehicle Status. You can check your tire pressure here as well as some energy stats with the car, but I really like that you can actually see a Cadillac Escalade IQ on the screen and move it around. You can actually look all around it and see what it looks like, which is a little goofy, but it's kind of cool that you can do that. And one of the most useful apps in this system is called Charging. When you go into this, you can actually adjust what percentage you'd like the battery to charge to, and the vehicle will tell you what time it will complete at. So that's a very handy thing to help plan ahead for maybe road trips or just to get to a certain level of charge. There's also a very nice camera app within this system as well. General Motors has been doing a fantastic job with their camera systems for years, and this Escalade is no different. You can see many different views around the outside of the Escalade, both front and rear. You can see the sides of the car and an overhead view. And with a big screen here, luckily it's also a very large camera, so you can easily see what's around you. And a fun app to mess around with is the ambient light app. Of course, this Escalade has ambient lights around the entire interior throughout different sections, but within this app, you have many different selections. You can choose between many different themes that Cadillac has preloaded into the system, or you can customize each light individually in each section to make it whatever color you want. And frankly, there are pretty much too many choices here because you're never going to be using all of the different colors in this system, but it is still nice to have just to make the Escalade a little bit more unique to yourself, or to change with the drive modes as well for a little bit more fun. But my favorite thing about the ambient lights has to do with the door pockets. At nighttime, if you put your hand into the door pockets, the ambient light there will turn white to make it easier to see. This is such a clever idea and makes seeing things at nighttime all the easier. You don't have to turn on the interior lights. It automatically turns white and very bright so you can see what you're doing. And along the bottom of the center infotainment screen, there are several preset buttons that are essentially there all the time. One of them is to turn the vehicle off if you're sitting here, or another one is to leave the car running for 60 minutes, and another one is to turn on one pedal driving. And this system allows for the driver to use just one pedal when driving. When they release the gas pedal, the car will then automatically start to slow down quickly, and this is a good way to help charge up the batteries again instead of using your brakes. Now, although the driver has plenty of apps and things to do while driving, the passenger does as well to keep themselves entertained. In the passenger side of the screen, when you click it, you can see multiple apps to choose from. There are streaming service apps, there's a web browser, and also a vehicle status app. And within the vehicle status app, the passenger can see multiple details about the vehicle, such as the vehicle's speed, they can see the energy usage, and much more about the battery life. It's actually a very cool idea, and I think an interesting thing that passengers can now essentially see what the driver's doing, which maybe the driver wouldn't like so much. And to make controlling this screen all the easier, say if you don't want to have to reach forward and tap it yourself, you can actually scan the QR code on the right and use your phone to control the screen instead, which is also a very nice idea. And because the passenger could be watching movies or YouTube, such as JW reviews to keep themselves entertained, the driver may get distracted easily. So the good thing is when the car is in drive, the screen is then polarized and the driver can't see it. And although there is a large 55-inch screen up front already, Cadillac thought we need one more. So they put a center control screen in the middle of the center console. You can adjust multiple things here. First, you can adjust the temperature. You can also adjust the air vents and the rest of the climate control. And you also have the ability to turn on or off the heated and ventilated seats up front, which is nice. And this screen has actually been very easy to use. It's easy to reach, it's very clear what each button does, and you can also use the presets at the bottom of the screen to quickly navigate throughout the screen. And I think this is a system that pretty much all future Cadillacs are going to have at some point. And speaking of the climate controls with this screen, you can individually set the temperature for both front occupants, both individual passengers in the second row, and then the third row. So that means that this car has a 5-zone climate control, which I have not seen before, and I think that's pretty cool. And this Escalade comes equipped with rear wheel steering. Well, Cadillac made a unique mode with their rear wheel steering with arrival mode. And when this is turned on, it makes the rear wheels turn in the same direction as the front wheels at slow speeds. And Cadillac made this because it's supposed to make it easier to pull up to a curb. Maybe you won't have to parallel park. And that's why Cadillac called this arrival mode, because you're supposed to use it when arriving places and looking cool. I think it's a bit of a gimmick and most people won't use it, but it still does at least look cool. And although there are lots of screens in the front of the vehicle and most of the controls are placed within those screens, Cadillac did provide a few hard touch controls to help make it easier. In the center console, there is a large rotary control knob. This is used to control the center infotainment screen. You can still go through all the apps with it and through the different pages and adjust settings. And there's also a smaller rotary knob, which is used to turn up or down the volume or turn on mute. And this center console is quite wide, so Cadillac made use of this extra space by adding a lot of things here. First, there are 2 wireless phone chargers, so both of the front occupants of the car can wirelessly charge their devices at the same time, and I think that's a very good idea. There's also a little bit of storage space behind the center command screen, and there are 2 cup holders which are lined in this really nice looking jewelry and look quite beautiful. And as far as the rest of the storage is concerned up front, we do have our door pockets up here that are quite large. There's also a very large center console, and there's also a glove box which has to be opened by pressing a button on the touchscreen, which I think is a little silly, but at least you do have that storage there. And I really like how there's a blue emblem in the center of it. It kind of looks like an old Cadillac crest, and I think that's a really nice touch. And the overall design of the interior up here really is quite nice. Everything is fairly simplistic, but it's not so simple like a Tesla that there aren't any buttons or anything in here to look at. But it looks really clean. I love how the vents are very thin and integrated into the dashboard nicely. And all the buttons in here really do feel high quality and very nice, especially for a base level Escalade IQ. However, one button that is missing that some of you may have noticed already is a start-stop button. Cadillac added a really nice convenience feature that when you sit down in the seat and press the brake pedal or close the door, the vehicle automatically starts up, and then you can just put it into gear and drive away. And there is one final screen in the front of the vehicle, and it has to do with the mirror. This mirror actually can turn into a rear camera mirror. To do this, all you have to do is flip the tab on the bottom of the mirror. You can turn up or down the brightness, you can zoom in or out, or you can move the camera up and down. But this is a very nice feature because if you have a bunch of people in the back of the car obscuring your view, you can flip on the camera and you can see perfectly fine behind you. And in the ceiling near the mirror, there are a few things to make note of. Firstly, there are a few buttons up here to turn on your hazards or for OnStar, but there's actually a camera in the roof here, which I find very interesting. Apparently, this camera can be used to stream directly to the owner's smartphones when the car is locked. I do think that's a good idea in case if you're worried that someone may break into it, but I also wonder, hopefully no one's able to hack into those cameras and see what you're doing when you're driving around, but I do think that is a good idea just so you can have a little bit more peace of mind. Okay, I'm now in the second row of the Escalade IQ, and fortunately things back here are still very nice. These seats are still nice and soft. The materials back here are still very good. You get all the nice Interlux leather, the blue quilting in the seats, the metal and wood in the doors is very nice, and everything is still very well put together, which is appreciated. I also like how we have a very large panoramic sunroof back here, so you get lots of light in here. However, there is not a sunshade to block out this sunroof. However, it is tinted very heavily, so you won't ever really get blinded by the sun. And unsurprisingly, there is another screen in the second row of this vehicle. It is very large and located underneath the vents in the center console. And here you can adjust the climate controls for both of the passengers back here, as well as the third row. And you can also adjust several settings, such as the ambient lights back here, which is pretty cool. You can turn on your heated seats, and you can also lock or unlock the doors. And this screen works just as quick as the front screen, very responsive, and once again, very easy to use, which is appreciated. And of course, this second row comes with all the expected usual stuff. We have cup holders in the center console, and we have USB-C charging ports. And what's nice is that these two bucket seats have levers on the side of them to adjust them. You can slide them forwards or backwards, or you can also recline them for the utmost comfort. However, for those who want the most comfort in the second row, Cadillac now offers an executive seating package for their Escalades in 2025. That means you get a full center console, you get an additional screen in the center, and you have power adjusting seats. Finally, Cadillac is listening to the people and giving the second row passengers what they deserve. However, this is only available on the upper trim Cadillac Escalade IQs and ICE models. I am so happy that Cadillac finally has added this to their Escalades. It's been needing it for years. Most of their competitors do have this as well, and Escalades are known for being livery vehicles, so the people in the second row need to be pampered, and Cadillac finally made that possible. All right, I am now in the third row, and unfortunately this is where things start to get a little bit worse for the passengers. Yes, you still get the nice quilted seats, but they aren't as soft as those up front, and also my knees are much higher than they would be in the front seats, and that's because of the high floor back here and the low seats. The ceiling also gets a little bit lower, and there isn't as much light because there isn't any glass above my head anymore. But it is at least bearable. I have enough legroom here to be comfortable. However, it feels a little bit claustrophobic back here, not just because it's a little bit tighter, not as much room, but because this window back here is so small. With that strange D-pillar design on the outside of the vehicle, Cadillac couldn't make the window back here any bigger, so it's just a weird little triangle. However, we still do get a few amenities back here. There are air vents and lights in the top of the ceiling. There are cup holders and a slightly padded armrest, as well as a phone holder, which is a nice surprise to see. There's a USB-C charger, and finally a button I can press to lower the second row seat so I can get out of here as quick as possible. Now that we've taken a thorough look at the interior and the exterior of the Escalade IQ, let's go ahead and take it for a drive. Here we go, driving the Cadillac Escalade IQ. Wow. Now this is exciting, driving an electric vehicle on the channel for the first time. And this isn't my first time actually driving an electric car. I've actually driven a Model S briefly before, as well as the new electric Hummer truck, and those are pretty interesting experiences as well. This is kind of a different take on both of those vehicles, obviously one being a sedan and one being a crazy off-road truck, but this is like the first electric luxury vehicle I've ever driven. And it's an electric 3-row luxury vehicle as well, which is quite rare these days. And I'm just now noticing as well, turning on the turn signal, that the camera is actually turning on the screen, showing me my blind spot. Then again, I don't know why you wouldn't just use the mirror, but it's kind of cool to see that there. So I have also driven another Escalade in years prior. I mean, a lot of people out today. And that was a 2021 diesel Escalade. And at the time, it was brand new. And I remember thinking, you know, this has an okay ride, but it's not great. And I was kind of expecting it to have a nice softer ride just because it's a big, heavy Cadillac. That's kind of what I wanted. I think that this ride of this particular Escalade is really, really good, especially compared to that Escalade I drove. Now, I don't know if Cadillac made any other changes with their 2025 models. Maybe they are now ride just as well as this car. I'm not sure. But from my experience, this vehicle rides a lot better. It's not nearly as trucky. Going over harsher bumps, it doesn't really reverberate throughout the whole chassis and the cabin. This vehicle really just feels a little bit more solid and more refined, which is a very good thing, because I think that's the one thing that harms the current Escalade, is that it is based off of a truck platform, body on frame, and so GM is probably limited to making it only as good as they can. There's only so much you can do to improve upon that. We have a straight here. Let's put it into velocity mode and see how quick we are 0 to 60. And luckily the roads are clear here, so we should be safe doing it. 30, 50, 60. Yeah, that was pretty exciting. I think these Escalades are meant to go 0 to 60 in like 5 seconds or so, which is really good for a big, massive SUV like this. And the handling does feel pretty good. Even with those big 24-inch wheels, luckily those aren't really affecting the ride from what I can tell. And the nice thing is, although this vehicle is quite heavy, it doesn't feel cumbersome. It does actually handle its weight pretty well, which is a good thing, especially for such a big vehicle, because that would probably scare most people away. And you know what? Since we have a little bit of a straight here, let me hit the gas. And I say hit the gas as if this actually has gas in it. And I still expect to feel the transmission shifting. I still expect to have a little bit of like, not a smooth acceleration, but I do, and it feels like something's wrong. I'm just not used to it. And the other big change with this model year of Escalades are, of course, this massive 55-inch screen. Even though I too get bothered by how screens are just getting bigger and bigger, how distracting is it? And I think that the good thing is with this screen is that it's actually not any more distracting than any other car I've been in with massive screens. And I think one of the reasons for that is that Cadillac didn't overload it with information. They didn't put as many apps on this screen as possible, as much info as possible to fill it up. They just made everything bigger, it seems like. So it's a lot easier to read things, it's easier to find things. I still have just the information I need to see and a little bit of what I want as well, but it's not overbearing, which I think is really good. It also is truly beautiful looking. I mean, the resolution is incredible, the colors in the screen, it's amazing. And I think that goes a long way for making these vehicles a success for Cadillac, because when people walk into the showroom, they probably are relying on a wow factor to make them want to buy a vehicle. And a screen like this in a car is going to wow just about anyone, because you're really not going to find it anywhere else. You've never seen anything like this before. So people are going to be amazed by this screen and automatically think that the Escalade is better than every other luxury vehicle out there. And that's really the only way that you can differentiate yourself these days, is by having some sort of technology or something that others don't have, and then implementing it better to make it more livable. And I think that Cadillac really did implement that well with this particular Escalade. But as far as what would I do if I was in the market for a large luxury SUV, maybe comparing between the regular Escalade and the Escalade IQ. Personally, I think that even though this car has a lot of really good qualities, I would go with the regular Escalade. And a lot of that has to do of where I live. I don't live in the city, If you want to go somewhere, you have to drive further distances. And I would still want to have confidence when doing towing and going on long road trips with an SUV like this. You know, most people buying these cars are going to have families and want to do those sorts of things. And having an EV today still doesn't make the most sense as far as having that confidence, because you could just buy an internal combustion engine and you won't have to worry about it. But I think my main problem with an EV isn't necessarily my range anxiety. It's more of my recharge anxiety, because the thing about charging an EV is that it could take a long time to get it all the way back up to 80% from zero, or even up to 100%. And that's, I think, what really scares most people, or probably should, because if it was to recharge in, say, 3 or 4 minutes, like the same amount of time it takes to gas up a car, then who cares if it has like 200 miles of range? You could probably find a place to charge it up in that amount of time and quickly do it, and you're done with it. Until they're able to get even more than 100 miles in 10 minutes, maybe 200 miles in 5, then that would make a lot more sense. Or just going hybrid. The hybrid route makes a lot of sense too, because you really get the best of both worlds. And one of the other things that would hold me back from getting the Escalade IQ is that the regular internal combustion engine ICE Escalade exists. And the thing is, as far as a value proposition, the ICE Escalade makes way more sense, because you get way more for your money. Because the base Escalade, this particular Escalade, costs just as much, if not more, than a platinum ICE Escalade. So you get even more luxurious features inside of the car, you get better materials inside as well, and you also don't get all of the cons with buying an EV. So the ICE Escalade just makes way more sense. However, that doesn't mean that the Escalade IQ doesn't have reasons to buy it, because it does. It's a lot quieter than a regular Escalade, so it's in some senses more luxurious. It also rides better, in my opinion. I think that this does look like a rolling concept car. It's going to get looks everywhere you go, and it just has very unique proportions that the regular Escalade doesn't get, which in many cases still kind of looks like a Chevrolet Suburban or a GMC Yukon. So you get a more unique car with this, and if you're a baller and want to spend tons of money on an Escalade, you know, the Escalade IQ is the way to go to get all the looks. And just because one person has a lot of reasons for not buying an EV doesn't mean that someone else won't have reasons for buying an EV. Someone else might have the perfect use case for one. Maybe they have a road trip car and then they have an EV for city driving or going to and from work, and that makes plenty of sense. And I think in the case of this Escalade IQ, I think it's still a very good luxury vehicle, but most importantly, it is still the Escalade that everyone knows and loves. All right, well, that's the Escalade IQ. I'm really glad that we had the opportunity to review this car today, and the first electric vehicle on the channel, but I really do owe the Rich and truly couldn't thank them enough, because they did not have to do this. They didn't have to let me take a car for the day that was brand new and obviously this expensive. So it was very kind of them to do. If you guys could please check out their website. If you're interested in buying a car, please check it out. Also, please give them a thank you in the comments as well. They certainly do deserve it. And that about wraps it up. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.